Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing psychic medium, spiritual teacher, and healer Tammy Franklin, who holds a bachelor's degree in metaphysical science. Tammy began her intuitive career by offering spiritual guidance and clarity to clients in 2009, and over time, her client sessions have evolved into doing more and more energy healing to help her clients align with their highest potential. She is a soul expert whose spiritual guidance provides higher dimensional insights that help her clients on their soul's journey, freeing them from their fear-based and self-limiting consciousness and bringing them awareness of the unseen energies that are influencing their lives. Similar to the mission of this podcast, Tammy is dedicated to helping raise the vibration of the human collective through inspiring people to heal. And when they gain the knowledge of the energies that influence their soul and path, Tammy's clients are able to align with their truth. In addition to private one-on-one sessions for spiritual guidance and intuitive healing, Tammy teaches transformational workshops that focus on spiritual intelligence, soul empowerment, intuition development, shadow work, and spiritual knowledge for this incredibly important time of change in consciousness that humanity is moving through. I'm looking forward to talking with Tammy, who will be speaking to us from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, about spiritual intelligence, soul wounds and soul empowerment, spiritual bypassing of fear and avoidance of the unknown, how negative emotions block us from knowing ourselves, this significant time of change in consciousness that humanity is now moving through, and so much more for what is surely going to be an interesting, enlightening interview with a psychic medium, spiritual teacher, and healer who is helping people to live their lives filled with joy, happiness, and fulfillment. Tammy, I could not be more happy to give you a truly heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my honor to be here, and thank you for that beautiful introduction.
You're welcome. I really like people getting to know the beauty of who I'm talking to and your expertise, so that as you answer some of these questions, they really know where you're coming from with all of this. So let's talk about, you came into this world as what you call awake.
Mhm.
And you were labeled as a sensitive by your parents, and you were able to feel energies in rooms and people. My God, at 5 years old or whatever, you were seeing all these energies and all of that. I mean, tell us what that was like for you and how your family reacted to that.
Well, it wasn't received well. So I grew up with a lot of labels, always being called most common sensitive. I was definitely invalidated constantly, I would say, and shamed. So I really, as a child, or my spirit is strong, and I just never believed those invalidations or those labels. I mean, there were times, and so as a child, let me back up. As a child, like, I didn't know I was intuitive. I didn't have the word psychic. My dad, I grew up in a Christian home, Protestant home. I was raised Presbyterian. We went to church every Sunday. I went to church every Sunday into my 20s. So, I came in definitely, I loved God so much as a child. I mean, I loved God. I read the Bible just because I wanted to,
Wow.
a children's Bible when I was younger.
Yeah.
I was just that's what I mean by like I was awake and I was definitely tapped in and connected to spirit, but I didn't have the words to say like, oh, I'm intuitive, or oh, I see angels. I definitely perceived energies when I was younger. I do think I had some psychic attack around age 3 where I shut down some of my clairvoyance, but still had my other intuitive senses of feeling spirits and feeling people's energies, definitely feeling the energies of environments.
You
And
must have walked into that church and been able to read almost everyone in that church as you were coming in every Sunday. That you were like, "Oh, this one's going through problems. This one's okay." Did you get all
well,
that kind of stuff?
well, I wouldn't say quite to that degree, but definitely like, just more of a general sense in that way. Yeah, as a child, right? But there were definitely things as I got older and more emotionally and mentally mature, then I could perceive more about people. And I remember just speaking to my own personal story. One of my brothers married at a young age at 19, and I just knew it was not a good idea. And I verbalized that it was not a good idea. And I was then labeled with my insane jealousy of that person.
Oh my.
And then I think they were married a total of 11 years. But I want to say a few years after that, I said, the day she makes more money, she's going to leave him. Same thing, my insane jealousy. Well, that's exactly what happened. And, I just knew so clearly. And I spoke because it was a mistake. It wasn't in his highest good. And it's, you know, been unfortunate. But, that's part of our
That's part of what it
experience,
is. I've
part of
been,
what
I
it
mean,
is.
I
Yeah.
don't have your depth of gifts, but I have a knowing also, and I have always been labeled as too sensitive.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I have a grandson now who's very sensitive, and I am his advocate. I will not let him be called sensitive, and I tell him it's okay. And I give him permission to be who he is, right?
Yeah.
So, it must have been very hurtful for you to be. Whatever happened with that brother? Did he end up one day saying, "Oh, Tammy, you were right," or is he still mad at you?
Oh, no, he's not mad at me. It was more my parents, but he's happily remarried and very good. Yeah. So he found, a better path.
Good, good, good.
But
So
yeah.
you had a metaphysical awakening in your late 20s, and then
Mhm.
you started working with angels and spirit guides and communicating with them. So for those of us who don't see our angels and spirit guides but sort of know we're there, how do they communicate with you? How do they appear to you? And tell us about that awakening that you had.
So, I like to describe being a healer, I think, as a calling, and I was definitely called. So, like I said, I didn't know in my early 20s, I still didn't know what a psychic was. And so I got married. Let's see, I got married at 27. And my husband and I, we bought a home. And my neighbor, she loved Sylvia Brown. And she introduced me to Sylvia Brown, or, not personally, but
Right.
like watch her on Montel Williams, hear some of her books. And I just was, interested. Like I didn't reject that at all. I was like, oh, cool. This sounds great. This is interesting. I want to learn about this. And I just was fascinated with it. And then I was involved with our church at that time. And we went to the Episcopal church, and so we had it was Mother Ann was the priest, and she decided to teach a class on angels, and she took a liking to me and was always, putting me in leadership positions and things. So I view her as an angel in my life to kind of, the synchronicities. And she decided to teach this class about angels because being raised Protestant, that wasn't something we ever really talked about or learned about. I think that's more on the Catholic Protestant Episcopal side. But anyway, so I was like, angels, like, I want to know about that. Like that, yeah.
Cool.
And then I had another friend, that's when Doreen Virtue was, on the rise and all of that. And her big message was angels. And so I learned about her and I was reading her books and really listening to her stuff. So I became really fascinated with angels. I wanted to know more. So that's my inner calling. And I answered that call. And then that's when I started to meditate. And I went to a Hay House convention back, in the late 90s. I, did all those things, and which was really fun, and listening to Sonia Choquette and Wayne Dyer and all those originals. And so was really fun, and I learned a lot. And then we left Washington, because at that time I was living in Washington, and we moved to Idaho.
Washington State.
Yeah, Washington State. Yeah. And we moved to Idaho because I couldn't do the weather. It was killing my soul. And so I kind of put my foot down with my husband and was like, I just can't. I lived there for 13 years, moved there because of him when we got engaged. And then I was just like, I'm out. I need the sun. I'm a sun goddess. So we ended up moving to Idaho, which we both are actually from. And I started looking around for spiritual teachers. I found a lady who was teaching classes and about energy and connecting with your spirit guides and things like that. So just like everything just lined up. It was super easy. It just really landed in my lap. And then there was another lady I came to find out about really quickly. And that's when I did that 2-year clairvoyant training program.
Is that the Metaphysical College? That's so cool.
Well, that was separate. That was that was, study an online program, and was really a great education in ego energies and consciousness and the power of your mind and your thoughts and those things. But the energy training was a separate 2-year course that I took, that we met in person monthly for 2 years. And we learned all about working with energy, our connecting with your healing guides, your psychic surgeons, working with. People with the energy healing, a lot of times people are like, oh, you do Reiki. No, I don't do Reiki. Reiki's totally different. I'm more specialized. Reiki.
Well, do me a favor, just define Reiki for them, and then define what you do so that they understand. Because I know Reiki I've had Reiki done on me where it's a healing energy, right?
Right. So I'm not a Reiki expert, but from what I understand, you receive attunements, and there's special attunements that you get. And then I think etherically, you're working with Reiki masters. Okay. And I would say, Reiki is a wonderful modality, and it helps a lot of people. I would say it's more like a general practitioner doctor, and I'm more of like a surgeon. So
you have your specialties.
Yeah. And so I do psychic surgery, and that's how I was taught to do energy work. And I work directly with source, with my spirit guides and the angelic realm. So I'm working, I say but they're doing the work. I'm the channel. They're
just
working.
like I feel about this podcast, Tammy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, exactly. I'm
the voice.
Yeah. Right. So what I want to ask you also is that you say that souls incarnate to evolve. And this is really important, because all of us who are going through these challenging lifetimes, I've told that we choose these challenges to learn from them. So what are some of the tools and knowledge that you share that's helpful to a soul's evolution? And please explain why we come into this drama and trauma to evolve. What's the point of it all?
The point of it all is to transcend fear and to transcend the 3D material plane. And a lot of times, what is the 3D material plane? That is based in duality and polarity. So we're really kind of thrown in the deep end with a blindfold on and given no clues as to what we're supposed to do with that.
Right. I mean, we're given amnesia, right?
Yes. And spiritual amnesia. Right. Exactly. Because yeah, we don't recall what, where we came from source, our creator. I say source, God, our creator, the universe. When I say that, I mean all those things. I interchange the words. So just clarifying that. But yeah, so we are beings of God, we're creator beings. And what we are here to do is to transcend fear. And in this, so we have to experience back to duality and polarity. You could simplify that and say good and evil, or bad and good, right? Or you could say right and wrong, up and down, any slow, fast, everything in our whole world, I think it's pretty easy to see is based in polarity or duality. And so we experience bad experiences. So we have all had traumatic experiences. We've all had hurt and heartache and deception and trauma, loss. And then we have our spiritual amnesia. So we don't remember our past lives. And part of that, teaching has been omitted, I would say, from my perspective, mainly to disempower us. So, one of the most profound things that I think I learned as a spiritual teacher was the first class I took from the energy work is, if you think of light is knowledge and darkness is lack of knowledge. And if you apply that to everything, it just makes so much more sense. So, what you don't know is darkness. What you don't know is unconsciousness. You lack awareness. And then what you do know, you can see, and it's tangible and touchable, and you believe it, right? The problem is we're taught seeing is believing, and that's a half truth. That's only half of it. That's the materialistic view. That's not the spiritual perspective. And we're spiritual beings having an earthly experience. And so our purpose is to go through all these physical, material experiences, and then how we get our power back is through the inner knowing and the self-realization of connecting with your spiritual nature. And that would be learning, oh, I have a higher self. And who I am here, Tammy on Earth, is an aspect of me. It's not all of me. And as I grow, I get closer and closer. As I grow as a soul and heal myself, I get closer and closer to my higher self. And that's, also you could say is what the ascension process is as we evolve and heal. And then, so that's one thing I kind of just got jumbled
That's
up.
right. But Tammy, where are we heading for that? No, but that makes total sense to me, because we incarnate to learn, to overcome a lot of negative emotions and the challenges and all of that. But and you have the tools and knowledge that you share to help a person to do that. What happens when a person is totally evolved? Do they become an ascended master? Do they have other things that go on? I mean, I know we reincarnate into many past lives as we're learning all these lessons.
Right. I think that's a little bit of an unknown. I would, yes, obviously you can become an ascended master. We may evolve into another plane of existence, another planet with a different consciousness. It could be another universe with a different consciousness. But, I have been studying Rudolf Steiner. Big fan of Rudolf Steiner's work, and he refers to we're in a school of a solar system, and so our consciousness, according to his teachings, evolves from planet to planet to planet.
That's so cool.
So, but we have such big blinders, and we operate from so much unknown of what we don't know that's been withheld from us. And we're really in the process now in this timeline of really, we're in such a powerful time because we're working on reclaiming all that. We're working on bringing that all back. So we have other timelines that we've been told are fairy tales, lore. I always have, as a child, believed in Atlantis. I never believed that was a fairy tale. And as a child, I decided that every fairy tale that I was ever told was actually a true story, and that that the adults were kind of lying to us. And knowing what I know now, that's true. I see fairies. Fairies are actually real. That's not a fake thing. Atlantis, come to find out, oh, guess what? Atlantis is real. Rudolf Steiner teaches about it. Edgar Cayce prophesized about it. There's so much knowledge out there. And so really at this time, Atlantis fell, and so many of us chose to be here because we're here. We're doing a redo right now, and we're not going to fall. And it's so important to know that and believe that. And all the people are going through such hard, challenging times. We have so many distractions being presented to
You
us.
are not kidding.
Yeah. And people are being really maxed out and pushed to their limits. I mean, even myself, like I was sharing with Irene before we started that this past year was I've experienced a lot of psychic attack, but this last year was another level of psychic attack. It's been 13 months and I'm just coming out the other side of it. And everything I know is because I've been through it. And this is how I have learned. I didn't believe black magic. I thought, just like, we're taught, like, well, if you don't believe in it, you're not going to give power to it. Well, yeah, that's not true. Guess what? Black magic is real, and it doesn't matter if you don't believe. And I found spirit showed me and taught me. And so I have a lot of knowledge about clearing black magic as a result of that. And this last year was that knowledge was taken. I experienced my first black magic attacks in I think it was 2016. And that was kindergarten compared to what.
Wow. So
Yeah.
please explain to me, we're going through this significant change in consciousness where there's so much chaos and everything appears to be rising to the top. And I've heard about that we're going from a 3D consciousness into a 5D. For those listening to us who are not knowledgeable about this, could you just succinctly kind of explain what the messes on this planet right now is all about? And we're going to survive it, I think, and move forward. Could you just tell us about this, which gives us all hope that, we can kind of maybe observe what's going on from a witness place instead of getting in the weeds with it. So
Yeah.
could you help us with that, Tammy?
Yeah. So there's a lot of layers there. So like just going back to, we had the fall, and I view this as this is the redo. So that already happened. So now polarity, duality. So now we have we're in the success story. Okay. And that's why there's so much talk about ascension. We also have, I think, part of why we see such a divide in, humanity, like the us versus them, is because there are so many of us that went through that fall. And so we know, and for many people, that's unconscious. And they're seeing through a lot of the manipulation games and the deceptions that are at work on a worldwide level now, not just in the United States, seeing it in all the countries. And people are really being asked to rise up in their power and say no. And that's the hard part. And that's our job. Our job is to say no. And people have so much fear around saying no. And it's important to stand in our truth. It's really, really important. I cringe because I have so many friends, and they see the manipulation and they see the deception, and they're like, yeah, but what can we do?
Oh man.
No. And I'm like, no, don't say that, because your thoughts are everything. And that's exactly why critical thinking has been usurped in education. That's why we are told what to think. That's why we're being labeled and shamed in today's world and being called all kinds of names. I mean, I honestly, truly think that we believe like medieval was bad. I think we're going to look back on this time and say that this might have been worse.
But is there a rainbow at the end of this tunnel?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So what are you getting about that? And is there a time frame about that?
I I have not, to be transparent, I haven't put energy into a time frame. I think timelines are extremely unpredictable. So I think anyone that says a timeline, I think is a going to be more of an educated guess. I think we are definitely I want to say I really feel we're definitely in the trenches at least through 2030.
Wow.
Do. Um,
Wow.
but my daughter asked me a question a few years ago, and I do think we're going to start to see an upswing in 26. So my guidance told me that things will start to shift. So I think we'll see the light in 2026. But the problem is why you can't say that that's an absolute is because there's a lot of timeline manipulation.
And free will.
And the free will, yeah. And it's so important. Part of what is really important is our thoughts, but it's for as many souls as possible to make this leap in consciousness. As many souls as possible to embrace their divine nature and to embrace their power. And so how you get through this is the how you get through this. Your connection to God. The power of God working through you is what gets you through this. We are not going to know the how. We're not going to know the why and the when. But divine synchronicities and the power of God, your alignment with God is what is going to keep you safe. It's going to keep you protected. It's going to, okay, you need to go over here, or this is your next step, or that's how you navigate these kinds of energies. And if you look at our past, we're just used to a lot more certainty. Right now, we're in uncertainty. We're in unknowns, but also part of that is also because we are creating the new earth. This is a new energy, and you and me, Irene, myself, all your other guests, all the people listening to your shows, we're the ones who are creating that new earth with our consciousness, our beliefs, our mind, our thoughts. So permission, possibility, being an observer, staying out of judgment, staying in your heart. These are all the tools that are going to get us through these times.
So, Tammy, let me ask you, someone comes to you and they say, okay, Tammy, I don't know, you deal with my soul. What does my soul look like to you? And I really would like some light shed on my own spiritual journey. What am I all about in this lifetime? And I'd like to reach for higher consciousness and get some divine guidance as to my path. How do you do that? What kind of tools do you use to help people to know this?
Okay, so well, I definitely use my intuition. I use my spiritual senses of clairvoyance. I really use all the four main spiritual senses: clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, and clairsentience. So, do you want me to say what those are super fast?
Yeah, if you could, sure.
Okay, so a lot of times, and this is a conversation I often have with clients. So one way that I do help my clients is I will look at their spiritual senses, and I'll tell them their two strongest clairs,
Ah.
so that they know how their intuition works and what they have that's most developed. So we have, in the material world, we go to kindergarten, we're taught about our physical senses, right? And but we also have spiritual senses. So, and these are the clairs. So clairvoyance is clear seeing. And that means you can see solutions in your mind. You can see entities, you can see beings of light, you can see, your crossed over loved ones. I mean, it can be anything. But what it is more a impression from the divine that comes to you into your imagination. And then there's different types of clairs, like you can see objectively or subjectively. I also have heard it described as seen in the first person, second person, and third person. So, but that clear seeing is the main thing, clairvoyance. And then clairaudience is clear hearing. And so that can be like Irene, you shared, you've heard the voice of God.
Right.
I have
Right.
too. I've heard it 2 times. which is super cool. So that can be like a literal hearing. Some people hear like voices of like angels. Some people hear sounds. But I would say most commonly clear hearing is just like a lot of times when I'm in a session with a client, I'll hear a word and it's just a very strong word. Like to me, it feels like it's coming into me, not coming from within me. So it's always like a pushing in, but it's from my guides.
Well, it's sort of like when I was sitting at my office and all of a sudden the word podcast came into my head and I didn't even know what a podcast was. And I thought, what is this? And then I had someone explain it to me and I said, I guess I'm getting my next step. And it absolutely wasn't my thought. That's how I knew it
Right,
was a
exactly. It's
message.
not your thought, 100%. Yeah. And it's usually a word that I don't use. I'm like, why do guides they have really good vocabulary? And I'm always I'm like, wait a minute, I got to look up this word first. And it's always on point. And I always, anyway, so that's an example of clairaudience. So it's an impression and a thought or a word. And then, so clear knowing is claircognizance. And this is a tricky sense because often people who have claircognizance do not consider themselves to be intuitive because they think it's just them. Oh, well, I just know this. And so there's a learning curve with that. So being more in tune with your spiritual nature, then you realize that that's not from you. That's from spirit.
You're getting messages and you're getting guided.
Yeah.
I think that's my strongest psychic sense.
Yeah.
Guided
And
claircognizance.
I like it because I think there's the least amount of doubt involved with that. The other senses people can question if they have fear at work within their consciousness, but claircognizance really doesn't seem to get questioned in that way. And then clear feeling is clairsentience. So, and that's a heart centered energy and an empath. You could associate the word empath with it, but more compassion, I think would be more accurate. You can put yourself in another person's shoes and more from a place of neutrality, whereas empaths they get sucked in. They're more like the sponge and they take on energies that are not theirs. But
Right. And that's a whole learning for them about how to protect themselves. So
Mhm.
another question I want to ask you is you talk about there's a spiritual intelligence and
Mhm.
you also talk about soul empowerment. Can you
Yes.
tell us about those? Because I know you can help a lot of people in our audience to become more spiritually intelligent and you can help them to empower their souls. And when you are checking in with a person's soul, how does that feel or look like to you? How do you
Oh, right.
perceive
Yeah.
it?
Okay. Keep me on track if I forget to answer.
No, no, no. I mean, it's just I have all these. You're
Yeah.
fascinating, and I have all these great questions to ask you. This
Oh, well,
we're
thank
helping a lot
you.
of people. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I touched on the intuition and how I help people is really aligning them. Your spiritual intelligence is your spiritual nature and connecting with that rather than functioning from your physical senses. That rather than functioning from an unconscious energy going through the motions of life. This is my lot in life.
Right,
And
right.
and it's amazing to me the amount of people who live their life from their ego self, and that's your false self. You're in a lot of times in sessions, I shine a light on where a person's the ego's job is to keep you in fear and suffering. So I always say the four cornerstones of the ego is limitation, illusion, separation, limitation, illusion, lacks. I'm forgetting one.
That's right.
But it's
So we all come in with this ego that's basically based in it's I'm going to make you afraid, and then the challenge is for the soul growth to have us transcend that. Like a situation comes in. So if you have a spiritual intelligence, I would say you look at that situation and you can either be gripped with complete fear or you can try to attach less judgment to it and maybe see it from a higher viewpoint.
right. So spiritual intelligence would be more being an observer to yourself, connecting with your awareness. And really, I if I wish in school, putting this out there, that when kids go to kindergarten, they'd be taught their spiritual senses, their physical senses, and that, oh, you have an ego, and this is the ego's job. And, the world would be a different place if we all were raised to understand we have this, and this is the ego is part of the 3D reality. It doesn't exist in other realities. So, and I have a really good story about this. My son, his best friend back in Idaho, his mom, she should write a book, and she should be doing what we're doing here, Irene. She's an amazing woman. So when she found out I was a psychic medium, she's like, oh, she wanted to share her story with me. She has had 3 NDEs.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So one of them, and this is why.
And by the way, everyone, NDE is a near-death experience.
So one of them, she told me she left her body and her husband was there and her 2 boys. And she was like above her body and she saw them, they were upset and emotional. And she was kind of like, hey, like I'm right here, like I can hear you kind of thing. And then I can't remember what she said happened after that. I think she must have had some interaction with the divine and her angels or whatever. But she told me the point is when she came back into her body, she said for the next, I want to say it was for the next 2 years, she had no fear.
Wow.
And so that speaks to your ego consciousness. So that spiritual experience showed her how fear is an illusion. And when you get more entrained with your spiritual nature, you really start to see how fear is an illusion. Yeah, do we have bad experiences? Do we go through horrible things? Yes. But when you heal those fears, they no longer have power over you. So that's the spiritual intelligence.
And one of the things you do is help people heal those fears.
Absolutely.
Right? And
absolutely.
some people do a spiritual bypassing of fear.
Oh yeah.
What's that about? And an avoidance?
I would say, huge part of I would say there's been an increase of conditioning, societal conditioning over the last 2000 of years to totally put us into spiritual bypassing. Because spiritual bypassing is the opposite of spiritual intelligence. It's powerlessness.
Wow.
And so it's avoidance of pain. It's doing what's easy. It's quick fixes. Addiction energies are a form of spiritual bypassing.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And so, that if you're working through addiction energies, that's a soul lesson. You chose that for this lifetime, or you could be healing and ancestral energy along those lines, because a lot of times addiction energies run in families. So being checked out, which is really, really common, I think, in today's world, because with the overwhelm, people just shut down. And then you're unconsciously now in spiritual bypassing because I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to get through the day.
And is that part of the fascination with technology and being busy on your cell phones and all that?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You're really not being in touch with yourself. You're just going to these other places to.
Yes. There's so many layers to that. I mean, that's part of, I would say the deception energies at work with, transhumanism agenda. That's, what happened in the fall of Atlantis was a misuse of technology intermixed with consciousness.
Wow.
And now here we are stepping into that in today's world. And so awareness around that is very important. You manipulate your consciousness, you manipulate your DNA, then that's transhumanism. And that's not what we're here to do, because that's your will. That's man's will. That's not God's will.
So you're saying when people get addicted or they're to anything, it could be gizmos, can be technology or whatever, or drugs or whatever. That's the bypassing. That's transcending.
Yeah. And a great example of that is like, I would say this false reality that's created through social media, right? That kids are developing instead of having face-to-face friendships and personal interactions. they're having more of a relationship with their phone and the social media that's going on with the phone than with the human beings that are around them. Another layer example that you could say of spiritual bypassing would be the virtual reality stuff, because that's dangerous, because that's really messing with your consciousness and creating a false reality. Like, that's the definition of a false reality right there.
Wow.
And so that's super, and that usurps your divine nature right there. That's a cheat. That, do you see, does that make sense how that is
Yeah.
spiritual bypassing? So that's not how we're designed to be. We're designed to use our imagination. We are creator beings. We're designed to use our creative forces. And artificial
Intelligence, all that.
intelligence is it serves a purpose, and can it be helpful and can it do good? Absolutely. But there's balance. Like with everything, there's balance. So it's having awareness and not taking that too far.
Too far.
Like,
So,
a
yeah.
lot of times I see now, like, I'll get things that suggest, on Canva, I've seen that because I use Canva a lot for my Instagram posts. And it's like, oh, do you want to have do you want to enable this AI thing to write prompts for you? And I'm like, no, because that would be inauthentic. That would be a lie. That's not coming from me. That's coming from a computer, and some of these computer generated things, like, you wouldn't know. Like, but I'm going to stay in my authenticity and my truth, and do it, I guess the old school way. I think just the real authentic way is the better way of
That
saying it.
makes sense. And this is huge for this interview. And I'd really like you to explain this to everyone, please, Tammy.
Mhm.
We all have these negative emotions.
Yeah.
And you say they block us from knowing ourselves.
Mhm.
And they keep us in patterns of, which I agree with you, feeling stuck or suffering. Can
Mhm.
you explain how this works with these negative emotions, why it's important to heal those negative emotions? And then there's the other part, they create soul wounds, right?
Mhm.
And what all that, and then soul wounds kind of create what's called karma. So it's a whole big
Big deal.
rounded
Yeah.
connected circle. Can you kind of connect those dots for us?
Yes. Okay, I'm processing.
The
So,
process, I'm talking about the negative emotions,
yeah.
and how we need to heal them,
Mhm.
because we often identify with them, and then how our and then these soul wounds that get created, and they create karma. So
Right.
the whole point of everything is heal your stuff so you can heal your karma, so that you can change how those cycles of being
Suffering. Yeah.
suffering. So could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know you actually do this for people. You help them
Yes.
to get past all of this negative
Right.
stuff, right? That
Right.
they're
So
holding.
the first thing is again, your awareness. So the information, the knowledge, the light of why and how this is affecting you. And so it can be through a multitude, the negative emotions. So we're beings of light and we're beings of unconditional love. And so we come in, you think you go back to your very first lifetime, and you come into this 3D reality where pain exists, where evil exists, where deception exists. And so that's going to really hurt you because it's so foreign to you. And so that's going to create confusion, and just depending on your soul and your light, because we're all unique and different, it's going to affect us all differently. And so that's really how your core wounds, your core soul wounds are created. And all of humanity has core wounds of unworthiness, I'm going to say, shame. Some people say that's more abandonment. I think it's all it's all connected.
It's all
It depends on
connected.
how you look at it. So, but fear, right? Fear. And so, but like, from that perspective, if you think of yourself like the first time you get burned, I think that this is a really good analogy. Like, how many of us know as a kid, like, oh, if I touch that, I'm gonna, fire's gonna burn me, and that's gonna hurt. Like, that's in your soul's memory. That's from past lives where you learn the hard way that if I touch that fire, it's gonna hurt. And sometimes we might need a little reminder, and then, but do you get the? I hope
Right.
that's a way a past life memory kind of comes in an unconscious way, and we don't even really think about it or cognize it or talk about it, right? So we all have soul wounds. I deal with a lot of I think souls come in differently, and we shift. So what I see, I work with a lot of empaths, because people who are in their ego aren't going to come see me. They're the ones who don't believe in what I do.
You're gonna
Although,
people who are light workers who want to clear themselves more, I would
yeah,
think, and
yeah,
get rid of the debris that they're carrying so that they can do more better work. And well, I would think that would be
yes,
your ideal person,
absolutely.
right?
So I tend to get a lot more empaths, or really, souls that are powerful too. I have so many powerful clients. So, but what that dynamic is in 3D duality is you're going to have an empath, and then that empath is, it's like the opposite attracts, and you're going to attract somebody who's more egocentric or identified with their ego. And and a lot of times that is a narcissist, but not always, but something along that lines. And so the person in their ego consciousness is always going to be blaming the empath and projecting upon the empath, dumping on the empath. And then the empathic person is going into self questioning. What did I do wrong? I can't do anything right. They're unhappy, they're suffering, or they know that this isn't right, but they don't know how to get out of it or how to stop it. And so that's where I help them with the divine guidance, and specifically the energy clearing. So a lot of times there will be like a past life where I'll see a spirit will bring forward like an oppressive relationship. I see a lot of times in women where their partner was chosen for them. I see a lot of that. And so clearing that past life. So I when I clear the past life, I make the client aware, and spirit's only going to bring forward what they're capable of handling and clearing at that time. So it's important. It's not a one and done. It's impossible to do a one and done. It's layers. It's always layers. And
So
and a
it's a
lot,
process. So something that can be cleared, say today, maybe more can be cleared when you've done more healing years
yes,
from now.
yes,
It's
absolutely.
layers, it's in layers, right?
Yes. Or someone might come in and I'll see, "Oh, you've been working on this. This is old and you're ready to be done with this. Let's just, let's close down these past life timelines, clear these ancestral energies." I go to the Akashic records, I clear it from the Akashic records.
Can you obliterate a timeline also if there's been a very negative past life? Can you get that out of the files so
Yes.
that that's no longer affecting the
Yes.
person anymore?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And so the more you clear each negative experience, the more empowered you become. And see, once you clear something, it's not coming back. It doesn't come back. Like you've integrated that. And that we say clear, but really it's a full healing, a transcending. And that's why I have my name is Transcending Belief on my social media, because you're transcending those energies and you're integrating them and you're coming back to wholeness. So that's really what it is. But the energy healing is so powerful. That's the most powerful, or I just think it's not the most powerful. It's an extremely powerful modality. First, you need the understanding, but the energy healing is the cleanup. It's like, oh, I want to clean my room and I need to pick up these messes, and you know exactly what you need to do. But unless you actually, get rid of the junk and reorganize and reprioritize, you're still looking at that
You're still
mess.
going to be living in that mess, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Okay.
that's how energy healing is so powerful, is because you're clearing the weeds off your path. You're clearing obstacles off your path. You're clearing energies that a lot of people just they get the information, but the energy work is, that's half. The information is important, It's important, but that's only half the picture. You want to clear that energy.
Well, you're going to get the information. Now you need to do the work. So let
Yeah.
me ask you, you talked before that you've been dealing with psychic attack, and I've personally experienced a very traumatic psychic attack, which I needed healing for. So can
Mhm.
you explain to people, they're wondering now, maybe I've been psychically attacked. So can
Yeah.
you explain to people what is a psychic attack? And then this is going to lead to the bigger question, which is, what are energy vampires?
And
Toxic people and
yes.
soul-sucking relationships. And how do you help us protect ourselves from that? I have experienced all of that. So
Yeah.
please educate everybody.
Yeah. So psychic attack is met can come in many different forms, and one of them would be an energy vampire. I would say so people projecting onto you. I would say definitely when you're interacting with a narcissist, you're dealing with psychic attack because I will see psychic attack can be just when someone is projecting onto another person, they're throwing energy, they're throwing accusations, they're throwing anger, they're throwing thought forms. So I'll have somebody call me up and I can see the thought forms like spiking into their aura.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, and then there's cords. They energetically will cord you to try to, and this happens all unconsciously. It's not it can be conscious. That would be more on the that would be a higher level psychic attack, but a lot of psychic attack happens unconsciously, what I'm speaking to right now, through projection and people functioning from their ego and from self-centeredness. So that's one form of psychic attack. Another form of psychic attack would be black magic. So that what black magic is basically using constructs of energy to impose their will onto another person's will.
Which is what happened to me. I had a very negative experience that way, and I had to purge. Someone helped me to purge that.
Yeah. So, and that can come in so many, and I feel like every time I turn on the TV, I'm seeing black magic. Like, like horror movies are a form of black magic because, they're advertising all these negative things that happen, and that's like and you think, here's one thing. Let's talk about permission and consent. So, and a lot of, and also, I'm going to say this too. The shows our kids watch, the fairy tales, the Disney shows that are all about what? Magic, right? You have a fairy godmother.
Right.
You make 3 wishes, Sleeping Beauty. You got pricked by a needle with blood. That's an introduction to blood magic. All these things, we are indoctrinated with this at a very young age, and we don't even know it. And most of society thinks that this is make believe. Well, how darkness works, the satanic structure, is it inverts energies. Satan is the deceiver and knows how to.
Now, Satan is a real thing.
Yes.
In your mind, Satan is a real thing, or does Satan represent the evil life forms and all of that?
That's a very specific question, which speaks to your knowledge. So I am still figuring, I go back and forth on that. I can't say with certainty yet, but definitely I think the satanic structure is very real. Let's put it that way. That's our term, right? That's our mainstream term for darkness. So there's and then you also have I like the way though that Rudolf Steiner defines it. There's the Ahrimanic forces and the Luciferic forces. So, but what's more societally accepted is Satan and spoken to.
Wait, please define those two. Aromatic.
So Ahriman is the 8th sphere from the astral realm, and this has to do with artificial intelligence. Okay, this is the transhumanism. Right. So And so if you think of duality, right, that makes sense. Whereas Luciferic energies are more the spiritual bypassing, the addictions, doing what's easy, what feels good, the sex stuff, that's all Luciferic. So, and again, we're not taught any of this stuff. And so it's important to educate yourself to know what you're dealing with. So back to permission, you go and you turn on the TV and you think, oh, I'm just watching the show for entertainment. Well, unless you specifically declare that, you just consented to being a participant in whatever magic is happening within that show. And because you don't know, from the satanic perspective, shame on you for not knowing.
Wow.
And see, that's exactly, I think, in a nutshell, how our lack of knowledge deceives us.
So how can people set energetic boundaries to protect themselves from all of this negativity that's coming at them?
So I do have a class on that. So, but I do give lots of tools, but it's like I could talk for the next 4 hours about that. But through your intention, through your imagination, I like to work with sacred geometry. So, the platonic solids. So I first like to, and I do layers of light and frequency. So, and then also asking for divine protection from the angelic realm. I like to work with Archangel Michael for sure for protection. He's the warrior angel and my right hand man, and I talk to him every day. So 5 times a day, maybe. And
That's so cool.
yeah, so I like to surround my aura with like I'll ask my team to seal my aura in light, and so I'll like seal my aura. I like to work with the violet fire.
What is the violet fire?
That's a angelic frequency that transmutes darkness into light. It's like I think in the way olden times, I think they refer to it as turning lead into gold.
Wow.
But violet fire is known for transmutation of turning fear into unconditional love. So it's a very powerful frequency. I work with it all the time to clear and cleanse. And so I like to start with having my team seal my aura in violet fire just to clear and cleanse. And then I'll layer around that gold, pink, royal blue, those colors. And then you can do, like I said, a geometric, sacred geometry shape, like a 4-sided pyramid. Sometimes I'll do, and I'm blanking on it. What's the 8-sided octagon?
Yeah. 8-sided octagon.
So I like the octagon because that is like a cube, right? But 2 of them, and it's like more of a beautiful star energy, right? And so that's a great one for protection because if you think of a square, that's like a limitation, right? It's a block, right? Literally.
Right.
So if you're using that for protection, that's why so you have your aura. Sometimes I'll do a square or sometimes I'll do an octagon or the pyramid with whatever my mood is or feel guided to do. And then I layer that in light. And then you can also place like Archangel Michael's, ask for Archangel Michael's shield and or sword to be on each side of the geometric figure. And like on each side, like top, bottom, front, back, left, right. And that is very protective. And that because when you're dealing with psychic attack, you're dealing with energy being thrown at you. Okay. And it's an energy transfer. And so if you don't know to seal your aura off and you're an empath, well, you just absorbed all that. And that's why psychic vampires are so draining and exhausting because they deplete you of all your life force energy. That's your kind of my soul sucking relationships.
And you don't really know you're being attacked like that, but all of a sudden something's not quite right. And you're saying, what's going on?
And
right.
Yeah. And if you're around somebody who makes you feel so exhausted, I mean, that's big cue right there. But unfortunately, most people just don't know that.
Right. Right. And then that's a subject we can't talk about now because of time, but that's a whole other subject about when someone is sucking that energy from you and that is
Yeah.
happening, that it's okay to detach from those people with love and back up, because once you know what to be aware of, that is not a good person for you to be around. That's a very
Yes.
negative person. And right.
And yes, and that's where I clear that. I will clear those energies off someone's and they feel so much better. It's like
Right.
night and day. It's night and day.
And
Yeah.
I've experienced that too. I know that you have a really wonderful example of healing someone's soul wounds through womb healing. Can you share that with us?
Yes. Yeah. So another energy I find myself working with clients is women will come to me with some kind of conception issue. So a lot of times if you have issues conceiving or you've had miscarriages or you just can't get pregnant, I mean, there's a lot of energies at work in today's world that are causing, problems with conceiving, but a lot of times this is also energetic. So, and it has to do with the past life where you had trauma. So your body consciousness is going to really specifically as a female and having a womb, we're the bringers of life, where we have a creative force in our physical anatomy and our spiritual anatomy to be able to develop, a new soul in our body. That's a spiritual process. Anyway, that's a spiritual process, period. So sometimes I will go through and I'll see people and I see like almost like a jello on their aura on their ovaries.
Wow.
And so this is like it will be energy from a past life, basically like they kind of got slimed from a bad experience, from a negative experience. They could have had a really awful birth experience where they died. And so then they go into fear and they feel this pain or a loss or, the trauma, and then that pain gets stored in their womb, and it could be throughout their womb, but a lot of times I'll first see it on the ovaries. And then I go through and clear the womb space. And so, yeah, I was sharing with Irene that I have I have a few this year that I have worked with womb clearing and have had success in conceiving. So and we went through that's not a one and done. Like we went it just really depends on your story and your circumstances and what comes up. But it's like that's how powerful soul healing is, clearing your past life traumatic experiences and clearing the body consciousness too on an energetic. That's where the power of energy healing comes in, is healing that body consciousness.
So you helped somebody to do that and you helped her to conceive? Is that what happened?
Mhm.
This
Yeah.
person came to you, she couldn't conceive, and then you
Well,
cleared her?
yeah. So she had had a miscarriage, so there was trauma around that, and grief, right? And grief really just shuts you down and really blocks you. So that's a big deal to clear and release that. And sometimes people don't know that that's what they have. They just, and that can be anywhere in your
How
body.
could you know? I mean, like if you're especially if you're in a 3D reality,
Yeah.
it's something you think something physical is going on or whatever, and people don't connect it with. It could be also something energetic.
Yes, yeah, always, and there's chance it's energetic, yeah, because energy is everything. That's everything. So, yeah, so we went through. She for this particular case that I'm referring to, she was doing IVF, and so she worked with me, connected with me, or I worked with her for each step of her IVF. So there was I think there was something about thickness of her blood or thickness of her lining or something. And so I did energy clearing around or whatever it was that needed to happen. I was able to perceive it and see that energy, and then with the energy healing, and then she would go back, and then that was fixed. The blood work or whatever the test was they were doing, that came back. And then
it was normal. It was all of a sudden, wow.
yeah. And then it was normal or whatever in the parameters that the doctors wanted that to be for that type of procedure. And so, yeah, so I had a success story around that. And which is, amazing. It's it's such an honor to be a part of people's lives in that way. I mean, I pinch myself.
It's beautiful. It's
So, yeah.
beautiful. So you have a wonderful story about synchronicities that we can really use to teach people about synchronicities. I loved your story about throwing curtains for your new home. Would you share that with all of us? That is like such a perfect story
Oh,
about
yeah.
being tuned in, clearing your blocks, being aligned, and how things can magically work out. It's like a perfect story about that.
Yeah. So this is, very much in the mundane of life, right? Like
But that's why it's a perfect example.
yeah. Yeah. And I have a lot of stories with that, honestly. But this one, I decided to sew these curtains, pinch pleated curtains, the long ones. And I haven't made curtains in like 25 years. I think I made curtains when we first got married, and then they weren't a thing. And I decided in this house I wanted curtains on these windows, and I was going to make them. So
boy, are you handy?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm determined. I have a strong will and I'm willing. And so I will figure things out. But anyway, I decided to make pinch plate curtains. Hadn't made them before. The internet's helpful. Watched some videos. So found out I needed this particular kind of pleating tape. So I went to our Joann's here, and so here's where the story comes in, is like I did invite spirit to help me with this project. I want to say almost always ask for spirit's help in anything I do. And that just, that clears obstacles off your path, and that gives permission for spirit to help you. And that's why it's so important to co-create with spirit.
And by the way, I want people to know that you have to talk to spirit and give them permission, or they won't come in, right? But if you invite them, they're right there.
Yes. And so
ascended master, spirit guides, deceased loved ones, but you have to call them in, right?
Yep. Give permission when you ask for that help. And that's where the solutions and the synchronicities happen, because you've asked and then you receive. So I asked. And so anyway, I was trying to go to this Joann's, and I wanted to go in the morning. I had decided I was going to go in the morning. Something comes up. Don't go in the morning. And then like I was going to go like right after lunch. I didn't want to go during the 5 o'clock traffic, right? Because I also had to drive like almost 40 minutes to get to this Joann's from where I live. Well, guess what? I ended up having to go at the 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock time frame. So I went anyway.
Being determined that you are.
Yeah, because I'm a determined soul. And so I went there, and I look on the aisle. I knew where the aisle was, and what I needed was not there. And so I went and found one of the employees, and I said, "This is what I'm looking for, and could you help me find it?" And she said yes. And we went back to the aisle, and yep, it's not there. And she's like, I just had somebody return something, and I think this might be what you're looking for. She goes back to wherever the return stuff was, and she pulls out like 3 times the amount of pleating tape that I needed. And she's like, "Is this what you need?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's exactly what I need." She's like, "You wouldn't believe it." She's like, "Someone literally just returned that just before you got here." And she's like, "That is just so weird. Like, how does that happen?" And I just smiled, I just smiled, and I was like, I know how that happens. And then I'm like, "Oh, that's why it took me all day to get here."
They were waiting because they knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, because it was the divine timing of that person returning it. So, and I just showed up right after her and got what I needed. So
what a coincidence.
Yeah. The synchronicities. I was like, "Oh, thank you." So, I put it all together really quickly. But I mean, it's a very simple way. I mean, we also, if it's okay, super fast. I have 4 kids. So the way we've traveled is we RV. And so I always ask for protection before we RV. I cannot tell you how many times we've had a breakdown and someone comes immediately and helps us. because I always ask for help. And there's been times where it was like in a place with no cell reception, and just some guy will just like within minutes, we're on the side of the road. Oh, this guy pulls over. Oh, you need this? Guess what? I have it in my trunk. Let me help you out with this. Like
Amazing.
every time.
Amazing. That's
So,
fantastic.
yeah.
Another question I want to ask you is, and then I want to ask you to let everyone know everything that you're doing that they can access with you, with your classes and all. But how do
Mhm.
you help people, which is so big in this world, Tammy, to let go about from their grief, their anger, their trauma? Because and it's so challenging to open to forgiveness and acceptance when people have traumatized you, have hurt you, pissed you off or whatever it is. How do you help people to transmute that, to transcend that? And then you always say that you can actually help them turn that into a frequency of love. Oh,
Mhm.
please educate all of us. I think the whole world needs this.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I think as far as one, it's the awareness, right? Sometimes people don't realize what that negative energy that they're holding in. So, especially with unforgiveness, a lot of times, most people have a misconception around forgiveness, thinking, oh, I have to forgive that person for exactly what they did to me. And that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is freeing yourself from that pain that they caused you. That's really what forgiveness is. So it's not that you have to, let's say if somebody, there's not, fabulous examples. Let's say your child died.
Actually, I have an example if you
Okay.
want to talk about it, which may help people because I went through the same thing. I had a very abusive father in my childhood, very seriously abusive father. And I always like to quip with people that when he passed, there was not a wet eye at that funeral. Many of us felt like, what took you so long? He was really rough guy to grow up with. And for 25 years after he died, I held on to the pain of my childhood like a backpack. And like when people would talk about my childhood and everything, oh, I had a really tough time and it gave me this problem and that problem and this problem. And then recently I had a session with a psychic medium and my father came through. I never asked for my father. Never.
Hmm.
And he said to me through the session, this person knew nothing about my childhood. He said, getting my life review was like being pistol whipped. I had no awareness
Mm.
of what I did. I was following my ancestral patterns. And I was not, obviously, he was not conscious about what he did. And he said, Irene, I've done healing on the other side. I am so, so sorry. He said, and you've taken what happened to what I did, which he owned. You've taken what I did and look at what you're doing with it and how many people you're helping and all of that. And you know what, Tammy? I could feel that backpack pack drop off me and I'm breathing free now, and I am not consumed by what that was. That's something that happened, but it's no longer really a part of me. Oh, what a relief. But would you say that's probably a lot of what you do to help people to drop their backpacks of pain and
Yes.
suffering?
You hit the nail on the head. It's that pain you're carrying. It is really, in a way, forgiving yourself. It's freeing because you didn't cause that. Like your father shared, he did that unconsciously because he didn't know better. And now he's learned the hard way. And there will be a balancing of that for him
Mhm.
in future lives. The law of cause and effect, or karma, right? So, but karma's not a punishment. It's just cause and effect. It's a balancing energy.
Now, if
But
my father came into a new life and did a lot of healing, or even did a lot of healing before he comes into a new life, that can lighten that karmic pattern, can
that's really up to the divine. That's what
it?
I would say. I mean, I think there might be some truth to that, but I think he will also, you have to go through the overcoming, right? So you're kind of presented with similar circumstances, and are you going to respond differently, or are you
Ah,
going to react in your same negative patterns? And that's why the difference between reacting and empowered responding. So there is an overcoming. So with the potential is there for it to be lighter for sure. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I
But
personally have requested that I do not come back into another lifetime with him.
yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
You know,
Reminding yourself of your own pain, of that pain that was caused from him, is what's key in not having that happen again. And so that's what it is. It's letting go of your pain. And I think when you look at it that way, well, yeah, I want to let go of that pain. And sometimes it's just so in you, and that's where the gift of energy healing comes in, and your spiritual team, it's really your spiritual team is like lifting that heaviness out of you, and they're transmuting that and healing that and turning that back into love. And that is when you feel lighter, you feel freer, your heart opens. A lot of times, always a heart opening after that. It's amazing, and it's one of my most favorite things is the heart opening in every session. It's like a natural high. It's like the best.
right. I mean, I've experienced it and it's wonderful. So,
Yeah.
having said that, let's talk about all the ways you can help people heal. I know you have one-on-one sessions for spiritual guidance and healing. You have monthly coaching and healing. You have classes. You have workshops. Let it rip there, Tammy. Let us know
Okay.
everything that you do.
Okay. Well, so my website is my main source. That's going to be your ground zero for everything I do. I have
And say
a
the name of your, and we'll
yeah.
link it all over the place. But what is the
Okay.
name of your
Thank
website?
you. It's tammyfranklin.net. And that's my website. And then from there, you can find my social media links. So I am very active on Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel, and I'll be posting more and more content to that. I'm also on Pinterest and posting content to Pinterest, and I'm working on writing more and more blog articles to have those. They'll be on my website as well as Pinterest. So setting up a session, you do that through my website only. That keeps it legit and keeps the scammers out of it. So, which is an
Speaking of
unfortunate.
dark energy.
Yeah, yeah. So you set up sessions with me, excuse me, through my website. I have a session info page on my website that really, like, all the years of all the questions I always get. I do my sessions over the phone. And so I don't need to be in person because of my psychic ability. I can tune into energy everywhere, and a person's presence is unnecessary for me. So I answer all those kinds of questions, and any, like, what energy healing is, what my modality is, which
Oh,
we
it's
have
fabulous.
on, all those kinds of things. So, and then my classes are on my website. I have a class on protecting your energy boundaries. So that's super important. It's to help you with, you don't have to be an empath to take. Highly recommend it for my empath clients, but it also helps you with psychic attack, energy vampires,
I would
and
imagine, especially when people are in very competitive businesses, like even the finance world or whatever, they must be getting attacked all the time,
yeah, I mean, it can be anything,
right?
anything. Yeah. Just really, attack energies happen so much just in our relationships,
Yeah,
families, friendships, all the things. And so yeah, so that's your main source is my website and Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube. So
right. Do you have any events coming up that you would want people to know about or anything happening?
I don't have a specific event right now because of springtime frenzy. And just the family life has been kind of pulling at me, but I have some things that I'm thinking about. So I have some ideas for some more classes coming up. So yeah, and and I also want to add, sign up for my newsletter, and that will be your best resource for knowing what is coming up. That I'm
That's great. That's so
latest
great.
offering through
That's
that.
great. Thanks,
So, and
Tammy.
that's on my website, on the main page, and in the footer, you can sign up for my website or my
That's
news.
that's great. I think your newsletter is probably a great thing for people to get. And what is Tammy's personal tip for finding joy in life?
My personal tip is aligning with your truth and your heart. which are both the same thing. So when you're soul aligned, you're going to naturally be in joy. You can't help it. So that's my best guidance on that, is living from your truth. And that's where the miracles and the ease and grace and synchronicities happen.
And that's a perfect conclusion for this beautiful interview. Tammy, I want to thank you for the work you do as an inspiring guiding light and a true way shower. You're illuminating the path for those seeking personal growth, healing, and spiritual awakening, and you are enabling them to live their lives fully empowered as spiritual beings. And I also want to thank you from my heart for what is a transformational interview filled with pertinent, enlightening insights during this time of tremendous change in consciousness that humanity is now moving through. Thank you so much, Tammy.
And thank
And
you, Irene, for you and all that you do for everyone with your show. It's so powerful.
thank you. Thank you from my heart. Thank you so much. And here is a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. As I like to say, to be continued. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thank
Many
you.
blessings, everyone. And bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.